Let's start with this is the Oz report for Monday, March 1st, 2021. And let's start talking about actually multiple training pilot training certificates because these have hit an incredible low point in the market. So you can buy them now for 1.14 million here, and that's only one. The one below is 1.17 billion, and that is incredibly cheap historically. So skill farming, the skill farming calculation actually says right now that let's pull that up right here. It actually shows the profit being at 774 million a month if you're doing that with one account. That is a lot higher than it was before. So I would actually think that multiple pilot training certificates would be in high demand right now, but they are apparently not. The price has been dropping quite significantly. So if you are looking for them, or if you are using them for your skill farm, which I don't approve, but I know you're doing anyway, then right now is the time to stack up on multiple pilot training certificates. Also, outside of the categories today, contaminated nanite compound is an item that is quite frequently traded as a salvage item, and right now it's at a 52-week low, pretty much, except for maybe exactly a year ago. And so that's definitely a time to invest in those. Even though they have been struggling a lot, this current point is exactly cheaper, exactly too cheap. Let's talk about Moongoo real quick. So Moongoo is interesting because Moongoo is split right now into some items that are trading on a price where you would want to sell. So for example, cadmium right here is trading much higher. We saw that rally in January, and it's kind of stayed up there. So this is an item you want to get rid of right now. Chromium as well, very similar trajectory. And then you have items like evaporate deposits that are struggling quite a bit. So overall, Moongoo has been struggling since the advent of scarcity phase, like we just discussed from CCP Rattati. And the reason for that is it's one of the few things that were still really profitable and that people were flocking to, and that's why it's something that is vastly oversupplied in the market. Hafnium as well is dropping quite quickly. It's almost getting into territory where you can buy it again. Mercury, on the other hand, has spiked a lot. So if you have Mercury, right now is a time to sell for sure. Platinum as well, and then thulium or thulium is something that has dropped down to 25. This is because somebody has been dropping a ton on a ton of thulium onto the market. I've been buying it up very quickly. As you see, huge stockpiles being liquidated. I am not sure whether this is somebody freeing up stockpiles or a corp freeing up stockpiles because they are in need of cash, or what is going on, but it's definitely triple-digit billions being pumped into the market. So to me, that is an indication of a good time to invest at the moment, because I think the correction on the market is an overcorrection. Titanium, on the other hand, way high, and definitely a time to sell. Titanium, I think, it has definitely peaked. So let's talk about Marauders. Marauders. Last week, I told you guys that the spike in Marauders is it's understandable, but it's unrealistic, right? Anytime you have a change in a buff in a ship, people are going to buy into that market, but it's all speculation, because the actual underlying cost of that ship is not going to change unless we have shortages in materials. And in this case, we don't, at least not in the long term, maybe in the short term. But so what had to happen was this is dropping down quite quickly again, and it is for the Golem and the Kronos and the Vargar. They are dropping down. The Paladin is actually holding. So people are going to hold apparently, or this is maybe a market that is being even more manipulated than the others. So that might be, but in the long term, this is not going to hold. So the build price of a Paladin is still going to be around 1.3 billion or something. So a price of 2 billion is not realistic in the long run. And you know, there isn't, the raw materials just don't warrant it. In the same patch, we've seen interdictors, or at least 3 of them being buffed. The Eris, the Flycatcher, and the Heretic, they had their tank buffed. And so same thing there. You have a price spike in there of people speculating into that market. The Saber wasn't buffed, and there you don't see any speculation going on. So pretty much same thing. Don't get caught up in it. It's going to drop down again. The hacks, they were nerfed. On the other hand, the hacks they had their MWD, let's see, reduction reduced, the signature debuff reduced, or however you want to say it. It's a bad thing, right? And so the Ishtar, the Sacrilege, the Vagabond, the Zealot, all ships that have been dropping quite significantly. The Sig Bloom increase, that's a nice way of saying that, yeah. So this is a correction in the other direction, and that is actually a good thing, because it's just like for the Marauders and the Interdictors, I'm telling you, it's not going to hold. This is also not going to hold. The way that the markets for these ships work is right now there's people dumping them because they're thinking they're worthless, or they're not, the demand is falling off. But in the long run, same as with the Marauders, it's not going to change the underlying material cost to build them, because so in the end, what's going to happen is the price will drop, margins will thin, a lot of people will stop producing them, there's going to be a new equilibrium reached, and that's still going to be based on the material cost involved in it. So the price fluctuations here are still going to be happening because of raw material fluctuations, and not because of short-term demand changes in these games due to buffs and debuffs. And that's why right now is a good time to buy into these when they have dropped to 52-week low prices, and that is exactly what I'm doing. Because of this, we actually saw Raging Darks and Chaotic Dark Filaments drop in price quite significantly, and I'm going to attribute that at least in part due to this the Sig Bloom buff decrease, because that is very important in Darks. For example, the Sacrilege that we just looked at is a very popular ship in Dark Filaments. And I think people are running them less. The Abyss tracker actually would indicate exactly that. Let me pull that up and show you the numbers. That's always more powerful. If you go into the Abyss tracker, you can see that there's a significant drop in number of in the number of Abyss run, at least in the Abyss tracker community, which is a good early warning sign for that. So Darks getting hit quite significantly. To me, buy opportunity. Whenever they get this low, I mean, Raging Darks sub 1 million, even 700 buy. I buy them just because you know, as I always say, the next buff or debuff or any change is just around the corner, and it's a bit of a gamble, but I do that personally, and if you want to take a little bit of risk, then do just that. We're seeing an interesting development in Abyssal materials, and that's an opposite direction. So crystalline isogen exploding in price, 0-point condensate dropping in price, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Even though the two of them, they come from different parts of, or different loot caches in the Abyss, and different types of filaments in different amounts. they shouldn't be going in vastly different directions unless you see what we're seeing now, and that is a massive buyout. So somebody staged a massive buyout of crystalline isogen, which is the only reason it spiked right now. There's no other underlying reason that I'm seeing. So be careful in that market. It should be dropping down back to a normal level quite soon, unless we're seeing long-term decrease in abyssal runs, and that would make both zero-point condensate and crystalline isogen rise in price, or at least it should in the long term, because that would mean that the supply is vastly decreased, while the demand doesn't really go down, because trig ships are still in high demand, whether people are running abyssal space or not. Isogen 10 does come from darks, but not only from darks, right? This type of trajectory goes way precedes the dark drop, and it's clearly because of the buyout, as you can see by that volume bar that is double the usual amount for the day. All right, the last thing that we'll talk about today is the guidance system, actually. And the guidance systems, the reason I want to mention them is because we as a community, I think a lot of us bought into this as it was really struggling. Now there isn't a lot of actually real world reasons why this should be vastly increasing in price. I think this is just a slow recovery from an overreaction, but I wanted to mention it because somebody today just dropped a ton on the market, like 150,000. This is about 10 billion in guidance systems that I was very tempted to buy out, but then again, it's very easy to put buy orders out and get them at 60, so I kind of don't agree with that. But in the long run, you can probably make a bit of money buying this out if this trend continues. And I wanted to mention this as kind of a placeholder for a lot of I think stockpile liquidations that have been happening in the market, because every other either PI good, moon goo that you look at is having huge amounts dropped onto sell orders and sometimes even buy orders. I mean, there are items that have had their entire buy orders liquidated. We saw that I think if we look at the Velis light entropic disintegrator, this has recovered a little bit now, but this, I think it was completely, all of the buy orders were completely gone, I think, or maybe the tier 2 ones. We're seeing that all over the place. It's kind of crashing prices. It's not good if you have a lot of long positions right now. If you're holding a lot of inventory, this is not great. Believe me, the fund is struggling. My personal trades are struggling. Stick in there. That is going to turn around. Maybe some of the changes that Ratati mentioned earlier are going to take us there, but there are a lot of other changes that could happen as well that are going to correct that. I think it's a good time to buy into the market, and I think that's a good positive point to end on. So if you're in the market, stick in there. Or hang in there, and if not, then make sure you jump in right now, because it's a good time to buy in. Exactly, diamond hands. All right, so we're gonna move back to the regular stream. Thanks for listening, and see you guys next week.